I used to think manipulation was something that happened to other people, naive teenagers, desperate strangers, or those who wandered too close to the wrong crowd. Never in my life did I imagine it would come from inside my own family, or from a woman who claimed to love me. But the first moment I noticed my mother-in-law's eyes lingering on me a little too long, analyzing me the way someone studies a puzzle they're determined to solve, something inside me tightened. At first, it felt harmless. Odd comments, strange suggestions, a tone that didn't match her words. But then the shifts became undeniable. She seemed bolder, more certain, almost like she knew something I didn't. Like she could anticipate my reactions before I even made them. Every conversation left me feeling drained, uncertain, and slightly off balance, as if I had stepped into someone else's mind without realizing it. It wasn't until I discovered the truth, what she had been studying, practicing, perfecting, that I understood the danger. She hadn't just changed. She had trained. And she believed she could bend me, reshape me, control me. But what she didn't know was that while she was busy learning how to get inside my head, I was already preparing to turn the entire game against her. Because if she wanted control, she had no idea how far I'd go to take it back. Are you ready to hear how I flipped the script on a woman who thought she could control my mind? Before everything with my mother-in-law began, my life was steady in the kind of way that feels almost fragile when you look back on it, like it was too perfect, too peaceful, too easy to shatter. I had a routine that grounded me. I worked remotely as a project consultant, which let me balance my days between focused work and small, simple pleasures. Morning coffee on the balcony, evening walks through the neighborhood, long weekends spent reorganizing the house just because it brought me comfort. My husband and I weren't living some fairy tale marriage, but we were stable, supportive of each other, and genuinely happy in the quiet ways that matter. His mother, Lorraine, was part of our lives in manageable doses. She lived only 30 minutes away, close enough to visit often but far enough that we had boundaries, at least that's what I thought. We weren't close, but we were cordial. She had always been intense, the kind of woman who never relaxed and always searched for something to critique, even when she tried to hide it behind a tight smile. I had learned to shrug off her comments about how I should dress, or how her home could be more welcoming, or how she preferred a different detergent than the one I used. Nothing major, just the usual tension that comes with marrying into a family whose expectations don't quite match your reality. Still, I kept peace. I tried. I wanted harmony for my husband's sake, and part of me hoped that, over time, we'd find a comfortable rhythm. And for a while it seemed like we had. Life moved forward in quiet cycles, and I grew used to her presence on the edges of our routine. But looking back, I realized that something in her started to shift months before I noticed it. Subtle things. A new confidence in her tone. A sharper focus in her gaze. She'd ask me questions that felt strangely specific, as if she were testing how I responded under pressure. She started showing up more often, offering advice I hadn't asked for, lingering in conversations longer than necessary, almost like she was observing me. I brushed it all off as typical in-law awkwardness. Everyone has quirks, I told myself. Everyone has phases. My husband didn't notice anything unusual, or maybe he was simply too used to her behavior to register the difference. Either way, I convinced myself not to make a big deal out of it. The truth is, I was distracted. I had just gotten a major client project at work, one that demanded long nights and constant focus. My energy was spread thin, and I didn't have the bandwidth to analyze every interaction with her. So those small moments, the way she'd tilt her head when I answered a question, the way she'd rephrase my sentences back to me, the way she seemed almost too calm, slipped through the cracks. But tension was brewing beneath the surface, quietly, like a slow leak in the foundation of my life. There were moments, tiny flashes, when I sensed something heavier. A pressure in the air when she entered the room. A feeling in my gut that I was being weighed, judged, studied. I'd catch her watching me in a way that didn't feel like disapproval anymore. It felt calculated, like she was trying to decode me. One afternoon, while she was visiting, she placed her hand lightly on my shoulder and told me I should try being more receptive. The comment wasn't necessarily odd, but the way she said it, soft, deliberate, as if planting a seed, stayed with me long after she left. That night, I found myself replaying her tone in my head, unable to shake the discomfort. But even then, even with that instinctive unease, I still didn't consider the possibility that she was doing any of it on purpose. Manipulation wasn't something I associated with her. Overbearing?
Yes. Dramatic?
Often.
But strategic? No.
That seemed impossible. And yet, the signs were there. Small shifts in her behavior that hinted at something brewing beneath her usual sharpness. Something more focused, more intentional. A new version of her I didn't understand but should have paid more attention to. What I didn't know was that her shift wasn't random. It wasn't hormonal, emotional, or stress-related. It had a source, something she was learning, practicing, and getting dangerously good at. Something that would soon turn my quiet, comfortable life into a psychological battleground. I didn't realize it then, but the woman standing across from me wasn't just becoming bolder. She was preparing, and I was about to find out exactly what for. I didn't realize how quickly small discomforts could turn into something heavier, something that twisted the air in the room, something that made me second-guess myself even when I had no reason to. It began with tiny shifts, moments so subtle I almost convinced myself they were coincidences. But every coincidence stacked on the next until they formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. Lorraine had started calling more often. Not the casual, check-in conversations she used to initiate, but oddly timed questions that never felt like she wanted real answers. She'd ask how I was feeling, not in a caring way, but in a probing manner. She'd repeat my responses back to me in a softer tone, as if molding them into something else. And when she visited us, she'd position herself close, too close, using a calm, even voice that made my skin crawl in ways I couldn't explain. At first, I blamed stress. The long nights with my new client project were wearing me down, leaving my nerves frayed and my patience thin. But deep down, something in me whispered that this wasn't just stress. There was intention behind her actions. Still, I pushed the unease aside. Life was too busy, too demanding, and I didn't want to become paranoid over nothing. So I moved on. I worked. I rested when I could. I maintained some version of normalcy. But normalcy didn't last long. The first real turning point came on a Saturday afternoon. My husband had gone out for errands, leaving me alone in the house. I was folding laundry when I heard the front door open. Before I could process anything, Lorraine walked into the living room with a bright smile that didn't match the intensity in her eyes. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, as if that explained everything. Except she never just stopped by. And the way she said it made something inside me tense. She looked around the house like she was evaluating something, not admiring it. Then she sat beside me, closer than she normally would, and placed her hand gently on my forearm. "You seem tired," she murmured. "You're holding too much in. I can help with that." Her voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. Each word came out slow, deliberate, like she had practiced them. As she spoke, I felt a strange fog wash over me, a heaviness settling behind my eyes that made it hard to focus. I tried to pull my arm away, but she held it a moment longer before releasing me with a quiet smile. "You should trust me more," she said softly. "I know what's best for the family." The fog lifted slowly after she left, and when I finally snapped back to myself, my heart was racing. I couldn't explain what had happened, but I knew, deep in my bones, that something was wrong. That night, I told my husband the interaction felt strange, but he shrugged it off. "She's just being dramatic," he said. "You're stressed. Don't overthink it." But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't shake the way her presence had seeped into the room, how her words felt like fingers pressing against the back of my mind. Days went by, and her behavior escalated. She began dropping unsettling hints in conversation. She'd tell me I needed to be more open-minded, more receptive, more aligned with the family's values. She'd speak slowly, deliberately, like she was coaxing me into something. She even started inviting me to her house more frequently, insisting she wanted to bond. Each visit left me feeling drained and disoriented, like my thoughts weren't entirely my own. And then came the moment that changed everything. It happened on an evening when I had gone to her house to drop off some paperwork she needed. She told me to wait in the living room while she finished a phone call. I sat down, tired and ready to go home. But my eyes wandered around the room, taking in the new decorations I hadn't seen before, strange symbols on small framed cards, odd books with titles about persuasion, influence, and mental recalibration. One book lay open on a side table, its pages full of highlighted lines about controlling emotional states and redirecting resistance. Something cold slid down my spine. When she walked back into the room, she startled slightly at seeing me looking at the book. Then her expression smoothed into something calm. Too calm. "Curiosity is good," she said softly. "It means you're ready." Ready for what? She didn't answer that question. Instead, she spent the next hour speaking to me in that same soft tone, weaving her words in a way that made time blur. When I finally left her house, I felt hollowed out, as if she had reached into my chest and rearranged something fundamental. I knew something was terribly wrong. That night, while lying in bed, I searched for the name of the book online. It was part of a course, one that taught coercive conversational techniques, emotional manipulation, and mental pressure tactics used in fringe groups. People called it a mind control course online, mocking it, warning others about its dangers. Some claimed it ruined relationships. Others said it was banned in certain places for exploiting vulnerable people. And Lorraine had taken it. Not just taking it, she was practicing it. On me. My whole body went cold. The next few weeks became a nightmare. She intensified her visits, her presence like a shadow spreading across my life. She inserted herself into private decisions, tried to influence my routines, criticized my choices, as if testing how far she could push. She'd use phrases that mirrored the course's teachings, phrases designed to break down emotional resistance. I would feel disoriented after talking to her, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. My thoughts would loop, twist, feel unfamiliar. I'd doubt myself, question my memories, second-guess every instinct.
And she saw it.
She enjoyed it. There was a glimmer in her eyes each time I hesitated or faltered, an almost triumphant glint that made my stomach churn. My husband still didn't see it. He brushed off my concerns, telling me I was overwhelmed. And maybe I sounded that way. Maybe I looked at it, too. But inside me, something sharper was waking up, something that refused to be controlled. The breaking point came one evening when Lorraine showed up unannounced while my husband was at work. She walked into the house without waiting for me to open the door, her confidence unnerving. She sat across from me, like she owned the room. "You're resisting again," she murmured. "You don't need to fight me. I'm trying to help you." Her voice dropped to a level that felt almost intimate, like she was speaking directly into the deepest part of my mind. My pulse thundered in my ears. And then she leaned forward. "You'll listen to me eventually," she whispered. "Everyone does." The confidence,
The certainty.
the absolute belief that she had me under her control, it ignited something fierce inside me.
Rage.
Pure, burning, clarifying rage. Not fear, not confusion, not exhaustion, but fury. And with that fury came clarity. She thought she had gained control over me. She thought I was vulnerable, impressionable, easy to manipulate. She thought she had learned enough to dominate me psychologically. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Because while she had spent weeks trying to shape my mind, she hadn't noticed the moments when my eyes opened, when I saw the patterns, when I recognized exactly what she was doing. She hadn't noticed the shift in me, the tightening resolve, the quiet observations, the calm planning. She hadn't noticed that the more she tried to control me, the more I learned how to stop her. How to reverse everything. How to turn her own tactics back on her. Burning inside me was a determination she couldn't anticipate. I was done being her experiment. Done letting her seep into my thoughts. Done playing her game on her terms. If she wanted control, I would show her what real power looked like. My plan began forming piece by piece, an intricate, deliberate strategy grounded not in chaos, but in precision. I studied her methods, her tone, her timing, her manipulation patterns. I noted her weaknesses, her overconfidence, her need for validation, her belief that she was smarter than everyone else in the room. Every interaction became data. Every conversation became a test. I mirrored her tone subtly, reflected her words back to her, shifted emotions when she least expected it. Little by little, I rebalanced the dynamic. She didn't notice a thing. And when I found concrete proof of her course, emails, notes, recordings she had kept tucked away in a folder on her laptop, the last pieces of my plan clicked into place. I knew exactly what I would do, exactly how I would do it, and exactly how I'd make sure she never attempted to control me or anyone else again. What she didn't know was that she hadn't been manipulating me for weeks. I had been studying her, watching her, preparing, and soon she would learn that the moment she tried to control my mind, it was the moment she handed me the perfect way to dismantle hers. She thought the game belonged to her. But I was about to flip the script, so completely, so irrevocably, that she'd never see the world the same way again. When the moment finally came, it didn't start with a bang. It began with silence, thick, heavy, electric, right before everything I had planned snapped into motion. I invited Lorraine over on a quiet Sunday afternoon, choosing a time when my husband was working a long shift. The house was spotless, sunlight drifting through the windows, nothing hinting at the storm waiting beneath the surface. I had rehearsed the scene 100 times in my mind, every step, every pause, every calculated shift in tone. When she walked inside, she wore the same confident expression she always did, chin lifted, eyes sharp, smile soft but smug. She believed, wholeheartedly, that she had shaped me into something pliable, something easy to mold. She believed she had won. "Good," she said as she set her purse down. "You're calmer today. Maybe you're finally realizing I'm only trying to help." The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I let my body stay soft, my voice even, my posture just slightly lowered, mirroring the submissive stance she had always tried to coax from me. It worked instantly. She relaxed. She smiled. She thought she had control. "I've been thinking a lot about what you've said," I murmured, keeping my voice low, thoughtful, "about being receptive." Her eyes gleamed. She didn't realize she'd just stepped onto the stage I had prepared for her. I guided her toward the living room, where my laptop waited on the table. She didn't notice its placement. She never paid attention to the details unless they directly fed her ego. We sat across from each other, and I let silence stretch between us. Not awkward silence, strategic silence. The kind that makes a manipulator lean forward, eager to fill the space, believing they're guiding the moment when they're actually following a script you've crafted. She folded her hands, waiting. I lifted my gaze to hers. "I think I'm finally ready," I said softly. "Ready for what?" she asked, but her voice carried that hungry anticipation. "To learn what you've been learning." The shift in her expression was immediate.
Pride.
Satisfaction.
Victory.
The look of someone who believed her influence had finally taken root. She leaned back, exhaling with relief. "I knew you'd come around," she said. "It's about understanding the human mind, about guiding others toward better choices." I let her talk, let her ramble, let her feel the stage under her feet. She loved the sound of her own voice when she thought she was teaching someone something forbidden or powerful. And when she finally paused, I spoke with that same calm tone she used. "Show me." Her smile widened, just as I expected. She took out her tablet from her purse and began pulling up folders, documents, notes, files she had compiled from her mind control course and her own practice sessions. She talked through them with confidence, each word dripping with the arrogance of someone who believed they were untouchable. Then came the moment she accessed her personal file, her recordings. Every session she had tried on me, every psychological tactic she had practiced, every note she had made about my reactions. She didn't think twice. She believed I was under her influence. She believed I was her student now. She believed she had complete control. As she scrolled through her notes, I reached forward and flipped the laptop screen toward her. Her voice faltered. On the screen was a live folder. Every single file she had opened automatically synced, recorded, and backed up to a shared drive I had created.
A drive my husband had access to.
A drive her closest family members had access to. A drive that, with one tap, would send the entire collection of her manipulative material directly to them, with timestamps, transcripts, and everything documented neatly. I watched as her eyes widened, the confidence draining from her face. What is this?" she whispered. I let the question hang. Then I shifted my posture, not soft, not submissive. I straightened my shoulders, met her gaze without blinking, and let my voice drop into calm precision. "This," I said, "is the moment you realize you never controlled me." Her breathing hitched. She reached for the tablet, but I gently placed my hand on top of it, not forceful, just steady. "You wanted to break me," I continued. "You wanted to manipulate me. You wanted to reshape my mind." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "And while you were busy studying how to control people," I said, leaning closer, "I was studying you." Her face went pale. She looked at the screen again, her recordings playing, her voice analyzing me like I was a project, a subject, an experiment. I clicked a single button. A soft whoosh sound followed. The files sent. Her chair scraped against the floor as she shot upright. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Those were taken out of context. You're overreacting." "I didn't mean." I cut her off with a quiet, controlled tone, the same tone she had used on me for weeks. "Sit."
And she did.
Not because she wanted to, not because she trusted me, but because she felt the shift in power and didn't know how to regain it. I watched panic bloom in her eyes as her phone vibrated, then vibrated again, then again. Her husband, her friends, family members, my husband, all of them saw exactly what she had been doing, exactly who she had become. She fumbled with her phone, her hands trembling. Her carefully built facade cracked, piece by piece, revealing the terrified, frantic woman beneath. "This isn't what you think," she cried. I was trying to help. "You twisted it. You." "No," I said quietly. "You did this to yourself." For a moment, the room was still. The sunlight felt colder. The house is quieter. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, not as someone she could manipulate, but as someone powerful, someone steady, someone unbreakable. "You wanted to control my mind," I said. "But you forgot something important." Her voice shook. "What's that?" I leaned back, letting the weight of my words settle. "You can't control someone who's already 2 steps ahead." The silence that followed was the kind that divides a life into before and after. She sat there, breathing hard, tears gathering but refusing to fall. And I watched her world unravel, slowly, painfully, exactly as she had planned to unravel mine. But this wasn't the end.
Not yet.
What came next would change everything, for her, for my husband, and for me. When everything finally came to a head, I remember feeling this strange stillness inside me, a quiet I hadn't felt in months. The kind of quiet that arrives right after a storm destroys everything in its path. When my revenge against my mother-in-law unfolded, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't explode like a scene from a movie. It was subtle, deliberate, and perfectly targeted, just like the psychological games she had tried to play on me. She thought her so-called mind control course made her untouchable, that she could slip her influence into my home and twist my life from behind the scenes. She wanted power. She wanted obedience. But what she never understood was this. When someone tries to control you, they teach you exactly where they're vulnerable. And so I flipped her script. And I did it using the one weakness she never imagined I would exploit, her need for validation. When the truth about her manipulation came to light, her fake mental techniques, her staged conversations, her subtle suggestions meant to isolate me from my husband, I didn't expose her publicly, though I easily could have. I didn't shout, accuse, or melt down. I simply collected every recorded moment, every text message, every slip of her telling me what I should think, and shared it with the one person whose opinion truly threatened her, her own son. And when he confronted her, watching her face crumble, not from embarrassment, but from the realization that she no longer had control over either of us, that moment changed something in me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't a triumph. It was released. For the first time, she felt the consequences of her own manipulation. For the first time, she had to sit with the truth of what her actions had cost her. And for the first time, I felt like I could finally breathe without her shadow pressing against my mind. But here's the part one didn't expect, the part that stayed with me long after the revenge had settled. I thought punishing her would erase everything I had been put through. I thought calling out her manipulation would somehow heal the damage. I imagined standing there, victorious, free. But revenge, real revenge, doesn't work like that. For weeks afterwards, I felt a strange heaviness following me everywhere. Not guilt, because I didn't regret what I did. Not shame, because I knew I had been pushed into a corner. It was something deeper, something more complicated. It was the understanding that revenge, even when justified, becomes part of your story in a way you can't simply walk away from. Because once you've gone to war, emotionally, mentally, you don't come back the same. Yes, my home was peaceful again. My husband and I were finally aligned. My boundaries were respected. My mother-in-law kept her distance, too embarrassed to step back into my life with the same arrogance. The balance had been restored. But every now and then, even today, I catch myself replaying the moments that led up to it all. Every whispered tactic she used. Every gaslighting phrase is disguised as advice. Every time she tried to make me doubt myself, my worth, my intuition, my sanity. And I realized the impact of her actions changed me as much as the revenge did. My retaliation taught me something important, something I don't think I fully understood until it was all over. Justice isn't always about striking back. Sometimes, it's about reclaiming the parts of yourself someone tried to take away. The confidence, the autonomy. The voice inside you whispers, "You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not wrong." I felt myself growing in ways I didn't anticipate. I became firmer in my boundaries, sharper in my perceptions, more aware of the subtle ways people try to manipulate or control. And most importantly, I became louder in defending my place in my own life. That was the impact of the revenge, not the damage it caused her, but the strength it built in me. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't come with scars. You don't stand up to someone who tries to mess with your mind without walking away marked. And maybe that's the real lesson I learned. Revenge isn't just about what you do to them, it's also about what the journey does to you. Because you have to confront fear,
Doubt.
anger. You have to walk through every moment they make you feel small or powerless. And whether you realize it or not, that process reshapes you. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, and sometimes both. I look back now and understand that my mother-in-law wasn't just a villain in my story. She was a mirror, a painful, distorted mirror that forced me to face the parts of myself I had overlooked. The parts that were too patient, too forgiving, too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, even when they didn't deserve it. She taught me, unintentionally, that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's survival. And as much as I despised the way she tried to infiltrate my life, I can finally acknowledge this. If she hadn't tried to control me, I might never have learned to take control of my own life so fiercely. Revenge gave me closure, but reflection gave me clarity. And that clarity is what I want to leave you with. Because my story, messy, dramatic, and painful as it was, isn't just about one manipulative woman and her ridiculous attempt at psychological domination. It's about anyone who has ever been pushed far enough that retaliation feels like the only path toward justice. It's about every person who has ever felt powerless and finally decided, not anymore. So, here's the question I'll leave you with, the same one I had to ask myself. When someone tries to control your life, what do you owe them? Mercy, distance, or consequences?
Think about that. Really think about it.
Because at some point, every one of us has to decide whether we're willing to let someone else write our story or whether we're ready to take the pen back, even if it means making a little noise in the process. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of someone in your own life, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it.
Talk about it.
Start the conversations people are too afraid to begin. Because silence is where manipulation thrives. And stories like ours? They break the silence.